If you're fighting to keep the house because it feels like the only thing holding your life together, you'll want to stay tuned because today we're breaking down the hidden costs and real options and how to make decisions you won't regret. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Welcome to Divorcing Strong, the podcast that pulls no punches when it comes to divorce. I'm Becky Sampson, better known as Bulldog Becky Brockovich, and I'm here to give you the straight talk, the strategies, and the subpoena secrets you won't hear anywhere else. With expert guests and proven advice, you'll learn your rights, your options, and gain your power that encourages a fair and equitable outcome. Divorce doesn't have to break you. It can build you. Let's get to it. Well, welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Divorcing Strong podcast. Of course, I am your host, Becky Sampson, and we just pound these podcasts out for you. I was just guesting on somebody else's podcast this morning. I got a late text last night, and they're like, "Becky, can you come on and be a guest?" And I'm like, "Okay." So, guesting and going, having guests on mine, here's the good news about being in this space, in the divorce space, is that it is so rewarding to know that what we're doing, even if sometimes like we feel like we're not touching the people that we want to, just the effort that we're getting out there and people coming our way, knowing that we're making a difference with what we're doing. And I am, as if you've watched any of these episodes, you know I'm really about educating yourself, knowing what your rights are, navigating the legal process. So I bring experts onto this show that are able to give you that resource and be able to support you through that process. And some of them are, I've got several life coaches or divorce coaches. I've got several financial advisors. But here's the thing, what I always say to people is that there's no competition. It's like you're going to find yourself to the person that needs you the most. And I bring you as many as I can so that you can kind of see what's out there, get as much information as you can. And I'm going to do a little shout out to my mom because she watches every single episode, and I'm telling you, she takes notes on every single, and I was thinking last night, I was telling my husband, I might want to bring her on one of these shows because I want her to be able to share all of her notes of everything. She was my right-hand person with me when I was going through my divorce. She was at every hearing, and I wasn't saying at the actual hearing, but she was there before and after. She helped me process. You might want to consider this, Becky. You might want to consider that. She was really my rock. And I would love to be able to, she's probably like going, "Oh my gosh." But Mom, you need to come on a podcast so that we can then go over everything that you've learned from these things. So I hope that you have notes that you can gather more information, be better. So today is a guest that I actually met really early on when I started doing all of this, before I did the podcast. And boy, she is connected. She is powerful. She is educated. She has the heart for this space to be able to help people through divorce. So I'm excited to have her on today. So let me just tell you a little bit about her. So on today's episode of Divorcing Strong, I'm joined by Melissa Murphy Pavone. She's a certified divorce financial analyst and a certified financial planner who helps couples walk through divorce without getting swallowed up by financial fear. There's a moment in divorce where everything feels like it's turned into a number. Your home, your retirement, your future, even your sense of safety. And suddenly you're expected to negotiate like a CFO while your life is breaking open. Melissa's work is built on that moment. With 18 years in financial guidance and experience across major firms before founding Mindful Financial Partners, she's become a calm translator of the fine print and the what happens later consequences. She also is passionate about approaches that reduce unnecessary warfare, bringing the right team together, staying focused on long-term stability, and keeping people out of the expense, draining battles when possible. So in public conversations about divorce finance, Melissa returns to what actually grounds people, getting clear on what you own, owe, earn, spend, and your credit score, which is something we haven't really talked about, but we're going to today. Then pressure testing decisions like, should I keep the house, or with real world what if scenarios. So welcome to the show, Melissa.
Thanks so much for having me, Becky. A pleasure to be here. And I love the shout out to your mom. I love my mom so much, and she is my rock, and my why. People often ask me, how did you get into this space, the divorce space? And I am happily married, but I am a child of divorce. And my mom made a lot of decisions with her heart and not her head, and it has impacted her future. So when I'm working with clients, I often am looking at them as they were a family member, right? And I want to give them that education and that empowerment to make the best decisions that they can.
Well, absolutely. And I think that, it may not be a family member that's your support through that. Believe it or not, Melissa, my mom and I hated my mom growing up in high school. I couldn't stand her. I wrote her hate letters. I told her, I wish you were never my mother. And now we are so close. And even so much that she's like, you need to speak at my funeral because like people need to know that there's hope. Like, and so, yeah, it's really, really important that we have people that can support us. And she has been an absolute gem that way. So I'm glad to hear that about yours. And we also learn from their mistakes, right?
Yeah.
That's what makes you passionate about what you do. So tell everybody, I love to start off with that you just like, what's the backstory? You told us a little bit about that, kind of why you're here, but tell me the backstory of what got you in this industry and what keeps you in this industry, because it's heavy sometimes.
It is heavy. I'm always in finance, straight out of college and really focusing on that. And as part of, my ongoing education, I became a certified financial planner. And then, as my clients evolved, their transitions evolved, right? Like, whether they were getting married or having kids and then getting divorced or losing their job, becoming widows. And through those transitions, I wanted to be the best financial advisor I could, right? To be able to give them the best advice. And so I really dove deep into the divorce side, because financial planning for a couple is very different than financial advising for a single person, right? And as we split up those assets and we shift those income streams. And so when I learned about the Certified Divorce Financial Analyst designation, I jumped in. That was back in 2015. So I've been doing this for 10 years now, and really wanting to learn everything I can, because there's a lot of misinformation out there. And I think that's what keeps me going and what keeps me here, even on the days when it is heavy, is that if I'm not doing it right, if you're not doing it, if we're not doing it, who is, right? And there is a lot of miscommunication out there, and we got to break through those myths, right? We have to educate the public and really get them to know what's important.
So what do you think? I mean, you just mentioned the myths. What would be like the top 3 you think that people have when it comes to our finances and divorce?
I mean, I think the number one, sort of go to, right, is like you call the attorney first, right? That should be your first phone call. And I very heavily disagree with that. I actually have a whole book that's coming out in March about designing your divorce team. And so I really think it's a 3-prong approach. There needs to be emotional support, financial support, and then legal support. And oftentimes people think that, I can't afford 3 people, right? I can't afford 3 professionals. But the truth of the matter is, if you have 3 professionals who are really good at what they do and stay in their lane, you have 3 professionals working at different price points, right? So I always say, you don't want your attorney, right, at their hourly rate reviewing your financial statements. And you don't want me as your financial talking about what happened at the birthday party and like rehashing a parenting issue, right? Like, it's not an efficient use of time and money. So if we can have 3 people supporting you through this process. And right, it's a daunting process, a process that most people only go through once, right? And when you're going through it, you don't know what the next step is. You don't know, is this normal? Should I feel this way? Am I supposed to wait this long? Should my attorney be calling me back? Like all of those questions that you have because you've never done it before. And
Right.
it's scary. And I think that's it, right? You don't want to be scared to pick up the phone and ask a question, but you need to have a team, right, surrounding you that can support you through this sort of unknown, because there are a lot of unknowns in divorce.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we talk about that a lot on this show is that team that you're creating, or tribe, or whatever it is that's supporting you. And I like that you even mentioned that they need to stay in their own lane, because it's, it's funny because the podcast I just barely did, I'm just like, entrepreneurs, we try to do everything. And I think sometimes attorneys even try to do that too. They think, oh, I'll just tackle that, give them a box of tissue and keep charging. And I'm like, you just do not want to do that. You're going to blow through so much money that way. Whereas if you have somebody that specializes in that particular area, then you really are able to move quicker through that, because they're not in territory that they're not familiar with.
Yeah, it's so true. I am a New York State licensed mediator, and I will not do a full mediation. I will co-mediate and stay in my lane on the financial aspect of it. But I've had friends and family and clients say, can you just do it for me? Like, you just do it. And I said, it's doing you a disservice. Like, I am not the person that you want to be hashing out the parenting plan, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's not my strong suit. I'm not good at it. And I know enough about my strengths and weaknesses to know that I'd rather bring in a colleague who that is what lights them up, right? And so you can have 2 of us. I can stay in my lane and do the financial aspect, and they can do the parenting plan. And now you have 2 people who are both neutral, but who are both supporting you. And I think that's really important, because some people don't have that, right? They don't do that gut check to say, I'm in over my head.
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
that's, like, we just have to be honest and real. And, even us as professionals, like you said, we wear many hats as entrepreneurs, but we have to know where our strengths and our weaknesses lie. And I'm the first to admit, like, you don't want me doing that. You don't want me doing your parenting plan. I am much better suited, right? Looking at your financial statements and finding creative solutions when it comes to the finances.
Well, I love that you just said creative solutions, because I think people don't realize that they have choices. They have a lot of choices, and everything's negotiable. So,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, especially when you're dealing with your finances and how to split those assets. So I love that you do that. I know one of the things that we named this about the house. I mean, like, talk to me a little bit about what you experience with your clients when they come to you and there's a house that needs to be split. Who stays? Who goes? How do you divide that? What are some of the concerns that they have, and what are some solutions that you would offer them?
Yeah, I feel like the house is a very hot topic, no matter sort of what the demographic is, right? Whether, you're in that ultra high net worth space, or whether you're sort of the average Joe just trying to make ends meet.
Mhm.
The house is oftentimes a big bone of contention. And oftentimes it could be one of the biggest marital assets, right? Like, on the balance sheet. And what's I'm sort of calling the golden handcuffs right now are those low interest rates, right? A lot of people
Mhm.
refinanced around COVID and locked in at all-time lows, 2.5, 2.875, 2.99. And now the thought of one losing that interest rate if there were to be a refinance issue, or to purchase a new house at 6.5% really changes, right? We're not on a level playing field. So that interest rate, I think, is a big issue. And, sometimes I've seen where people are like, hey, we're going to stay in the house and we're going to nest, right? We're going to either put an apartment in or some sort of creative solution to that, because they can't necessarily afford, right? Or it'll be detrimental moving forward, to
Mhm.
lose that rate. But it's hard. And it's not just, sell the house and divide by 2. That's one option, right? But there
Mhm.
are a couple different options, and I like to go over all of them. And I like to, when I meet with my clients, really lay them all out there, right? So that we're not sort of pigeonholed into just one solution. because I like to try to look at it as a financial puzzle piece, right? And we have to,
Mhm.
all the pieces have to fit together. And as you know, nobody wins in divorce, right? This is not a zero sum game, right? Like we have to figure out there's a pool of assets, there's a pool of income, and we have to just divide them in a way that makes sense, especially when children are involved. I try to focus everything through the lens of the children. And that sometimes takes the pressure off, right? Because when we focus through the lens of the children, it's less about our spouse
Right.
and that sort of resentment that we have, right, for them. Um, so yeah, so I mean, talking about the house, I sort of try to do a decision tree, exercise with my clients, and some of it's, sell now and split the proceeds. And we have to take taxes into consideration, right?
Mhm.
Oftentimes I'm saying, how much did you pay for your house? What improvements? And people start to get annoyed. They're like, why are you asking this? Like, just tell me. I'm like, no, these questions are important, right? The devil's in the details. And I need to know all of these details so that I can really guide you and that we're comparing apples to apples, because we can't just ignore capital gains, right?
Right.
And that goes with saying, there's oftentimes some clients that come in and they are pigeonholed into, I'm keeping the house no matter what. I don't care. Like I'm keeping the house. And
Whether they can
sometimes,
afford it or not.
right. And
Yeah.
sometimes it's that, right? If they did not choose this, if they did not want this, they're holding on to the house, right? As that rock for them, right?
Mhm.
That sort of steady ground. And the thought of packing up years of stuff and relocating is just too heavy for them at that time, right? And so I have seen it, unfortunately, where people, to a detriment of their own financial future, have said, okay, I'm going to refinance and buy my spouse out, and have given up a lot of assets and potential income due to that. And they end up regretting it. I call it divorce remorse, right? Because when you're going
Mm.
through it, you are just trying to survive the day.
I think you
You,
actually said that on one of your lives the other day, and I was like, "Oh, I love that divorce remorse."
yeah,
Because before the show started, I actually told you a little bit about mine, and I've shared it in here. As my first divorce, I was living in a condo. I was the main breadwinner. I was paying the mortgage and all of that kind of stuff. And so, obviously, when we got divorced, he moved out. I kept the condo, but I ended up I went through a major reset in my life at the time, and ended up quitting my job because I thought I would go do something else. And it didn't take off as quickly as I thought, and ended up with no income and wasn't able to pay the mortgage. And my mom, again, bless her little heart, she's like, Becky, come live with me and rent your place out. And I'm like, no way, I can't emotionally leave. And I had recreated this beautiful space for myself. But within 7 months, it ended up foreclosing because I couldn't pay the bills. And I mean, I look back now and I'm just like, what was I thinking?
but
Like,
you weren't, right? And you couldn't.
no,
You
no.
couldn't.
Because
You
I
can't
could have
see it.
had that as an investment all these years later. It could have been totally paid off. It could have been an income for the rest of my life. But the problem is we're so attached at that point. We're so emotionally, we're not thinking straight. So having people within our sphere or support team, as you say, to be able to say, look, here's really what's going to happen, and is that what you want? To be able to walk you through that and be real with them.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Yeah.
it's hard.
We oftentimes have things on paper that, look nice, right? And you can put it in, but we have to be real. And this has to, I always say I meet my clients where they're at, right? This has to be feasible, not just on paper. So we
Mhm.
need to look at these what if scenarios. And oftentimes, when they have that, I'm going to buy out no matter what, I will stress test like, all right, boiler breaks. Now what? We need a
Mm.
new roof. Now what? Right? Like, where are we getting this money from? How are we going to maintain it? And all right, let's see this cash flow, right? If we have two people, all of those bills, they don't get cut in half when one person moves out,
Exactly.
right? The garbage is still the same, the sprinklers, the lawn, the maintenance, all of the oil, all of that costs the same, whether there's two incomes and two people living in that house or one person. So it's not divided in half when someone moves out. The expenses oftentimes go up, right? And sometimes we have to replace even more, right, some of those household duties, right? Or people that if someone said, oh, I took care of the pool or I took care of the lawn, are you going to take that task over, or we have to outsource that? And so now this is an additional expense that we're not taking into consideration.
Yeah.
So I get really real with them, and I try to, really go deep, because I want them to understand it. And it's hard, right? I am very empathetic because a brokerage account worth $500,000, right, is a piece of paper with some positions, right? On it, you didn't have holidays, your daughter didn't learn to walk, right? You didn't bring, you didn't have family ties to that, or there's no sentimental meaning to this piece of paper, right? And you can still have that same $500,000 in equity in the house, but it's different. You've had memories and pictures, and it's been part of it. So to be able to make these long-term decisions, you can't do them in these heightened emotional states. And I always say that having a CDFA is having a financial ally. But when I'm looking across, you're trying to get through the day, I'm looking at how this decision is going to impact you 5, 10, 20 years down the line. And you, right, as a divorcee, can't see that. You can't see past this week.
Right, exactly.
And so it's that like flight or fight, right? So if I have the ability to zoom out, then we can see how these decisions, because oftentimes we're just thinking short term, right? Because it's that flight or fight. Like our body is in that, heightened emotional state. And I'm looking at the long-term picture, because just you, right? Just you sharing that story and being vulnerable and saying like, hey, I wish I never would have done that, right? Like my life would have been different. I would have had a different asset on my balance sheet. I would have had a different cash flow if I had somebody there, right, to help guide me through that. And so that's how I want to show up for my clients, to really see it's not just, sell it or, refinance it. Sometimes it's, can we co-own it together, right? And, if we want to keep that really low interest rate, and if we can co-own it and wait until the kids graduate, right? Because that's often another sort of bone of contention.
Yeah.
Moving the kids, the school district, there's a lot of, trials and tribulations of just like a normal teenager, right? Let alone disrupting their sort of high school year. So if we can, there's a sweet spot, right? To be able to say, okay, if this is amicable, if we can co-own this, knowing that we're both not tied to this district after our kids graduate or go off to college, and then we can sort of share this, split this asset, sell it. That's often one that people don't look at, right? Because they want it now. They want it like here and now, and they want to be done with it. And sometimes it's not the best solution. Sometimes that time heals, right? And we can sort of be making decisions from a calmer, with more clarity, more calmness.
See, that's what's hard, is that you just don't know what you don't know, and nobody knows what the future is, right? Like and somebody that might hear that also maybe be like, well, I don't want to still be tied, because what if I move on, and what if I get remarried? And those are all things to consider in a divorce. And it doesn't mean that you can't come back and renegotiate, say, okay, look, I'm getting married now, can we do something different than what we did before? But it is something that we do need people that are thinking straight, that do see the bigger picture. And just to go back and clarify, I think something that you said is CDFA is a certified divorce financial analyst. So it's not just a financial planner, but you're certified in the divorce space, because there's a lot of other things that are to consider than just a regular financial advisor. So you've got that certification, and I appreciate that about you. I also love that you are detailed, and you're caring to be like, hey, here's all your options. Not just these are the 3 that I think that would be good for you, but here's all your options. Sure, you can split it. This is what are the pros and the cons about that, because it's a very big decision. What do you find probably is one of the most challenging things that your clients deal with and they come to you with, that you have to help them walk them through?
I think that sometimes we don't have enough non-qualified assets, right, to sort of offset that equity in the house. So oftentimes I see, the house as being a big asset, and, people can have a lot of equity in that house, and then they have a lot of perhaps retirement accounts, right? Whether there's a pension or a 401k or a 403b. What they lack is sort of that offset, right? Whether it's cash reserves for a money market account or an individual brokerage account, right? They don't have that. And so then it becomes, how do we trade equity in the house with retirement assets? And that costs more, right? Because we have to gross that up for tax purposes. And so that becomes tricky. And that, right, taking from that bucket for retirement to offset the house is a hard one, right? Because we have to look at the time horizon on what that looks like and what that gap is going to be to get to the part of retirement, right? Like what that timeline is. How much time do they have to sort of recoup if they're taking a big chunk out of retirement and putting it, towards offsetting the equity in the house. So
yeah, that could be challenging, because if you don't have the other assets and you want to keep the house, you got to find the money somewhere, right?
yeah.
And unfortunately, divorce is very much a money. It can be very much a money transition, or transaction, I should say. Yeah, so let's talk about, like, what's one of the things that you find that people, if they could make this one decision, would make a big difference in the outcome? Or
I think really going through the exercise of sort of that decision tree and really getting deep. It's not just, okay, we sell the house, this is the commission, right? We need to talk about that capital gains. And if somebody, and I tell the story frequently, there was a client that came to me, wasn't my client. They went through a divorce, and the attorney referred them to me sort of after divorce for that post-divorce transition assistance. And so she came to me and she said, can you help me with my cash flow? Can you help me with my assets? And I said, sure. Tell me, what transpired through the house. And so she was somebody who was married to the house, right? And said, I'm taking the house no matter what. And she couldn't qualify for the mortgage assumption.
Yeah.
She couldn't, right? And because that's like a whole nother, avenue of the mortgage. And then so she had to forego any maintenance that she was, entitled to because of the equity in the house, because there was no other assets. And so I said, all right, so you have this house. Great. And she said, I said, what about your income? And she said, I have child support. I said, okay, but your kid's going to college. And she's like, yeah, but I'll still get child support. And, they didn't explain to her that there was an offset for room and board, and like that child support was going to go down, because this was going to go towards room and board. And she sort of like looked at me. It was like the first, like, red flag. And then we went on. I said, all right, how are we going to pay? The taxes are really high. The maintenance is really high. Like, this is a big house. How are we going to maintain this? And she said, oh, I have this account here. And she showed it to me. And it was a retirement account. And I was like, how old are you? And she, was young 50s. And I said, yeah, you can't touch this until 59 and a half.
Yeah.
And so then, like, again, deer in headlights. And nobody explained these things to her. And so she ended up, she was very mad at her attorney and the whole process. She ended up having to sell the house, right?
Yeah.
And now she sold the house. She inherited the cost basis of the house. And now she's selling it with only a $250,000 capital gains exclusion. She had a huge taxable gain on the house because the house was given to them. They purchased it low from a family member. And she got killed in capital gains taxes. She ended up getting penalties because she ended up having to go into her IRA early. So she had that 10% withdrawal. And the whole thing could have been so differently. And so I use that as like a case study to say, if I was brought in earlier, right, we would have reworked this entire thing. We wouldn't have had to sell the house, right? The child was close to going off to college. We could have co-owned it, then sold it, and then both had that 250 exclusion, right? So we could have avoided some additional capital gains. We could have made sure that she had some alimony or, maintenance so that she can help go back to work and, get on her feet again and sort of rebrand herself without having to go into her retirement account, without having those penalties. So there's so many things in sort of that case that I just wish that if we sort of really peel back the layers of the onion, you get to really the root of it, right? And what that looks like. And people sometimes they get annoyed at me because I'm so detail orientated. And I'm like, all right, tell me about that kitchen renovation. And they're like, why am I paying you to talk
I
about my
know.
kitchen renovation? I'm like, this is important. I need you to find that file in your filing cabinet that has the receipts because we need to know what capital improvements you made to this house. And they're like, we don't care. I'm keeping this house. I said, yes, but I care about you 10 years from now when you sell this house. Like, we need to prepare now for all of those what if scenarios. And
Oh
I
my
think
gosh.
that's really where what sets me apart from other CDFAs and other financial advisors is that it's not just the here and the now, it's the later too, because these decisions, there's an impact, there's a ripple effect that each decision that you make has on a future decision.
First of all, Melissa, I would totally want you on my team because when I used to do real estate, I used to say the same thing. I'm like, look, I take a lot more time with you because I'm going to teach you about real estate. I'm going to teach you real estate 101 before you even sign your name on any paper, because I want you to be educated. And I mean, way back then, all those 20 some odd years ago that I did it, because people, the more they know, the more they understand, but you need the data to be able to give them that strategy. And so I love that you keep, you gently push, it sounds like you're gently, say, hey, I need this information so that we can set you up for success throughout that. And the other thing that my thought about that, the gal that made those decisions, here's something that people don't sometimes consider. And I know you're going to be like, oh yeah, this is it. But if somebody's relying on an alimony payment or a child support payment, let me tell you, there's plenty of people out there that things happen in their life and they stop paying. Or they get married and then that spouse doesn't want them to pay that anymore. So then all of a sudden you're relying on somebody that you just divorced to pay your bills, to be your bank, so to speak. And they decide one day that they don't want to do it. And then you have to take them back to court. And that could take months, because I've experienced it, months to get the court to do anything. And then even with the court saying that he would have to pay it, doesn't mean he's still going to pay it. So relying on somebody else is just a really, really, really tough, especially in a divorce. So man, I always say to people, I'm like, please, you need to move on and find your own security. And that's a bonus. That's a bonus.
Yeah. And you know what? I think that there's a lot of shame sometimes when people come to me and they don't know, right, a lot about their financial future if they weren't the CFO of the family, right? And they sort of relied on their other spouse. And it's not always the women. I know we sort of like gender assume that it's the women, and it's not always the case, but there could be one person that sort of has, knows the day to day, and the other person that sort of knows, who the attorney is and the accountant and does like the big picture things. And that's okay, right? Because we all fall into our roles within our family units, but there's a lot of shame in not knowing. And so when I start to work with a client and I have a financial clarity package that I sort of set up for those who are quietly thinking of divorce, right? If they're just like, hey, I want to do this. I think I want to do this. I don't know what it's going to look like. I don't know if I can afford it, right? Let me help prepare you. And what we do is we go through all the documents that you're going to need, right? Regardless of which option you choose. If you choose to stay, if you choose to go to mediation, if you choose to go to collaboration, if you choose to go, to litigation, which I don't suggest.
No.
All of the work that we do together is worthwhile, right? And preparing you, because whatever that legal course is, it's going to prepare you for that next step. And so when we go through that, it's often, during that process where they're like, I don't know where my mortgage is. I don't know if we have a home equity line, maybe, like, I don't know if this is joint, right? Like, and so there's a lot of shame in that. And I sort of just like brush that off. And I just say like, hey, think of this as ground zero. You're only going to know more from this point on. And I'm going to teach you. I'm going to go through every statement and tell you what it means, what kind of account it is, what the pertinent information is. And then I think it's sort of like they get to breathe, right? Because it becomes sort of like, okay, I never went over this. And you know what? It's not just common knowledge. If you don't know, you don't know, and that's okay, right? But I really help educate them and empower them. And then once they start to learn, they start to feel a little bit better and more confident in their decision making, which I think is really important.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you work with people all throughout the United States, or is it just one area?
I do. Yeah. I'm located on Long Island, New York, but I work nationwide.
Okay,
Um,
perfect.
so
So you can work in that. And also, do you mainly work with women or men, or?
it's funny. People always ask me this, and they just sort of assume because I'm a female, I only work with females. And the casework is pretty 50-50 split between men and women. So I am gender agnostic. I think it's important really to like, trust, and respect the people you work
Yes.
with. And so sometimes it's not always a good fit. And I liked how you said in the beginning of the show, right? This is not a competition, right? Like I
No.
oftentimes will call up and say, hey, if you don't, like me, or right, that's okay. If our energy doesn't jive, or you want somebody closer logistically, or you want someone to meet in person, here's a couple of names, right? But don't
And you're very
not,
connected.
yeah.
You're super connected. I know that personally. I actually sent somebody to you yesterday because I totally value this collaboration in this space, and I love the people that are in the divorce space supporting people, because it's a really great, amazing people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it really is, and I can't say that enough. And I think that there's such a bad reputation, right, for
Yeah.
like the divorce world, and right, the sharks of the world who just want to sort of, the 6-minute increments and keep on the clock ticking. And
Yes.
there's a whole world of us professionals who really want to help people, right, to divorce differently.
Yep.
And I have a book coming out called Divorce by Design, and it's just that, right, that team approach of like finding the people that you need to get through this. But I oftentimes will say, like, here's a couple other CDFAs. If it's not going to be me, that's okay, but hire a CDFA, right? Like, here's a couple lists of divorce coaches, mental health professionals. Here's a list of mediators. Like, they're all vetted and they're all great people, but you have to jive with them, right? And you want to
Mhm.
like, trust, and respect the people that are on your team. So I think that's really important when choosing professionals. That energy exchange is important.
Do you find that the people that you work with are the ones that aren't as familiar with the finances, and the one that is like the CFOs of their families?
It's funny. Sometimes it's pretty 50-50 split. I've
Is it?
also had, a lot of sort of the traditional stay-at-home moms, right? That sort of took
Mhm.
some time off of work to raise the kids and not sort of know where the finances quite are, and left that, to their spouses. And recently I have gotten sort of these powerhouse women who are the breadwinners, right? And they
Mm.
are very much so the decision makers, and they are the ones with the high jobs with, the benefit packages and the RSUs. And so it's funny seeing the shift. Divorce doesn't
Interesting.
discriminate. It doesn't matter where you live or how old you are. I have, some divorces that are in their 20s and some that are in their 70s. So I think that it's very unique. And I think because of that, it should be customized, right? It shouldn't just be this cookie cutter approach of like, okay, you call a lawyer, we do this, and we're done. You want it to be specific to you, especially if your family warrants that, right? Oftentimes
Mhm.
there are children with special needs, right? There could be health issues, there could be addiction. And that's when it's really important to have the right professionals there to support your family through this, because divorce is hard enough. But if we add on any other additional layers there, you really need that extra support.
Are you kind of like me, Melissa, where you're like every day is a new adventure, and you're like, okay, give me all the data so I can
Yeah.
like give the strategy.
Yeah, no, and I love it. Like I
Yeah.
love helping. I look at it as like a financial puzzle, right? Like,
Yep.
here's the puzzle. How are we going to help you? And again, there's no winning, right? It's just sort of like, and it's really important. And sometimes I can be a neutral, and other times I can be an advocate. And in both cases, I'm always asking about the other spouse, right? The other
Yeah.
side, because it's important to know what their priorities are, just as much as it is my client's priorities, right? So to know that yin and that yang, to be able to see, okay, this is something that's not as important, or this is not, as a priority, but it is to the other spouse, and we can use that as leverage. And I think that's important too, that the psychology, right, of the strategy to negotiate and to really see where that give and take is, because it is a negotiation.
Absolutely, 100%. And I love that you say that it is a journey. Everything's negotiable. Get the right people on your team, and really divorce strong.
Yeah.
So here's a question for you. So what does divorcing strong mean to you?
I think that it would be, looping it back to my book, like divorcing by design, right? It might not be a choice that you chose for divorce. It doesn't necessarily have to be your decision if you're here. However, you can decide how you are going to move through it. And I think with the proper team, that emotional, financial, and legal support, that you can divorce strong, right? It doesn't have to be a tragedy. It doesn't have to be a war. It could be a new chapter, and you can feel fully supported throughout it.
Oh, I love that, Melissa. And thank you so much for being such a bright light in this space, because I know I've seen you all over social media and serving people and doing trainings, and I know you're a professional guest on a lot of people's podcasts because I see it out there. So thank you so much for what you do, and obviously with the heart that you have and the detail, because people need it. And I appreciate you taking the time today to come on our podcast. So make sure you reach out to Melissa. All of her information will be you can go to the website, but you can also go to all the show notes. Her contact information's on there, and reach out to her and talk to her about your situation, because it's really important to get the right people on your team. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So
Thanks so much for having me, Becky. I loved being here with you, and I love continuing the conversation. And together, I think we really can make a difference.
100%. I really believe that. So hold on one sec. All right, everybody, thank you so much for joining another episode of Divorcing Strong. I have been your host, Becky Sampson, with Melissa Murphy Pavone. She is amazing, amazing. Just make sure that you get the right people around you, and so that you don't have that divorce regret. I forgot what it was. Divorce regret. I forgot what you're saying already. But anyway, make sure you join us. We're going to have 2 more episodes tomorrow, where it's going to be hot topics as always. And please know that this is a temporary time in your life. You're going to make it. We appreciate you being here, and we'll see you on the next episode. Thanks for listening to the Divorcing Strong podcast. This episode is sponsored by Only Subpoenas, where we make subpoenas simple, powerful, and 100% compliant. If you're having a hard time getting the information you need to settle for a fair and equitable divorce, let us help you. Whether you're an attorney or you're navigating divorce on your own, subpoenas can uncover the truth, secure the evidence you need, and level the playing field. To see how we can help, book an appointment by visiting our website at onlysubpoenas.com.